Dubai at night glitters like a jewel in the desert. Skyscrapers pierce the sky, and the city hums with luxury, a playground for the wealthy, a place where dreams are made. In March 2025, 24-year-old Ukrainian model Anya Morozova boarded a flight to this city of gold. She was ambitious, rising fast in the modeling world, and her social media showed a life many only dream of: five-star hotels, yacht parties, designer fashion. But just hours after attending a private hotel party, she vanished. For 3 weeks there were no posts, no calls, no updates. The only trace was a final text to a friend: "Hey, I'm busy." And then, one dawn morning, a taxi driver spotted her stumbling along a road near an abandoned terminal. She was barely alive. Her body was shattered, fractures in her spine, ribs, and wrists, her skin covered in burns and bruises. When she finally regained consciousness, what she described was unlike anything investigators had ever heard. It would become one of the most disturbing cases ever linked to the world of luxury parties and the global elite. Anya Morozova was not born into luxury. She grew up in a small Ukrainian town, the kind where everyone knows each other and dreams feel impossibly far away. But from a young age, Anya was determined to stand out. She had the look, the ambition, and the drive to escape small-town life. By the time she was 22, she had moved to the city and was booking modeling jobs, small gigs at first, fashion shoots for local brands, then runway shows, then bigger campaigns. She was building momentum, and everyone around her could feel it. Her social media became her portfolio and her stage. Followers watched as her life transformed from modest apartments to sleek hotel suites. There were photos of her in designer clothes, sipping cocktails by rooftop pools, laughing on the deck of private yachts. To outsiders, it looked like a dream life. She was young, beautiful, and seemingly unstoppable. But her friends noticed something else: a shift. The trips became more frequent. The men she was seen with, more powerful. When friends asked, she brushed it off with casual replies. "Just modeling gigs, promotional work. The pay is insane. You wouldn't believe it." Some were impressed. Others were concerned. But Anya would just smile and wave it off. "It's normal," she'd say. "Lots of models do this. It's all legit." And she wasn't wrong. In the fashion world, it's common for models to be flown out to exclusive parties. The deal is simple: show up, look glamorous, mingle, make the event look good. Big payments, first-class travel. No strings attached. At least, that's how it's supposed to work. But behind the glittering facade of these events lies a shadowy world. They're whispered about in modeling circles: the Arabian parties, secret gatherings hosted by the ultra-rich, by royalty, by mysterious Gulf elites. Some are harmless, nothing more than expensive networking events. Others have darker reputations: lavish mansions in Dubai, secluded villas on private islands, or palaces in Abu Dhabi. Champagne flowing like water, music echoing into the night. The girls were told to just smile, pose for photos, keep the mood light. But as the night deepens, the atmosphere can change. Former attendees speak in hushed tones about coercion, psychological pressure, even criminal acts. Some describe being separated into smaller groups, escorted to private rooms, contracts and NDAs already signed, phones confiscated. What begins as a glamorous celebration becomes something else entirely. There are even rumors of strange rituals, animal sacrifices paraded as entertainment, disturbing ceremonies disguised as cultural tradition. To outsiders, it sounds like urban legend. To those who have seen it, it's the unspoken cost of admission. Anya had been attending these gatherings for about 6 months. Her posts became fewer, her captions more cryptic. She filtered what she shared, but it was clear she was making more money than ever before. Then came the invitation that would change her life forever. About a week before the incident, Anya told friends she was flying to Dubai for a quick 3-day promotional shoot. She was upbeat, excited, and promised to come back with new contracts, new photos, maybe even the big break she'd been waiting for. It seemed like just another trip. No one knew it would be her last job before everything collapsed. Anya's final trip started like so many before it, with excitement. She messaged a few friends the night before her flight, saying she'd be gone only 3 days for a quick promo shoot. She sounded light, upbeat, even a little proud. This was supposed to be her next step, her chance to sign new contracts and expand her reach. When she landed in Dubai, she posted a single story on Instagram, just a photo of the city skyline from her hotel room window. There was no caption, just a heart emoji. Then, silence. No more posts. No selfies. No updates. At first, her friends didn't panic. Anya had gone off the grid before during big events or long shoots. But usually, she'd resurface within a day or two. This time, days passed. By the third day, her phone was going straight to voicemail. Messages sat unread. A single text finally appeared on the fourth day. "Hey, I'm busy." Short, cold, not her usual style. Friends would later say that something felt wrong about that message, as if someone else had typed it, or as if Anya had sent it under pressure. And then she went completely dark. Behind the scenes, investigators would later recover messages from her phone leading up to the trip. Invitations to what was described as a private yacht party, the kind of event models talk about in hushed tones. The offer was lucrative: first-class tickets, 5-star accommodation, and a payout that was impossible to turn down. But it wasn't a yacht. Anya and several other girls were reportedly picked up from their hotels and driven out of the city, past the gleaming towers of downtown Dubai, past the luxury resorts and shopping malls, to the outskirts. Where they ended up was not a yacht, but a secluded villa, hidden behind high walls and guarded gates. What happened next has been pieced together from Anya's testimony, leaked messages, and fragments of security footage. Inside the villa, the girls were asked to sign additional papers. Their phones were taken. The atmosphere was different, colder, stricter. At first, it was what you might expect. Music, drinks, guests in designer suits. The kind of glamorous party Anya had been to before. But as the night deepened, the tone shifted. The music grew louder, the laughter sharper. The girls were led into separate rooms, sometimes paired off with guests. Anya would later describe the moment she knew something was wrong. It stopped feeling like a party. It felt like we were there for something else. That night would mark the last time Anya was seen by anyone outside that villa. Back home, her friends began to panic. They tried contacting her modeling agency, who claimed to have no information about her exact location. Days turned into a week. Then 2. Her social media remained frozen, her messages unanswered. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that she was finally found, wandering barefoot near an abandoned terminal, her body broken and burned. Anya would later say that nothing could have prepared her for what happened inside that villa. When the party started, it had all the hallmarks of luxury: crystal glasses, designer suits, live musicians playing softly in the background. But as the night wore on, the mood shifted. The guests, powerful men, some accompanied by private security, began gathering in a larger hall. The music changed, low drums echoing through the villa, and the girls were told to follow. Anya described the room as enormous, lined with marble floors and gold fixtures. In the center stood a long table covered in silk. At first, she thought it was simply for dining. Then, the lights dimmed. What happened next would haunt her forever. In a trembling voice, she recalled seeing animals brought into the room: goats, rams, their presence ceremonial. The guests watched as they were sacrificed one by one, blood spilling into bowls as laughter and applause filled the air. To them, it was entertainment, she said. But to us, it was a warning. According to Anya, the atmosphere turned menacing. The girls were no longer just guests, they were participants, unwilling witnesses to whatever this was. Some of the girls cried. Others begged to leave. The guards shut the doors. The rituals went on for hours. Strange chanting, masked figures moving through the hall, the smell of smoke and blood. At one point, Anya believed she was going to die. She said the girls were lined up along one side of the room, forced to watch as the guests performed what she could only describe as a ceremony. She claimed some girls were taken away and did not return. Her breaking point came when one of the guests approached her directly. "Smile," he told her. "You are here to be beautiful." When she refused, she was shoved back toward the wall. Anya tried to escape that night. She waited for a moment when the guards were distracted and slipped toward a hallway that led outside. She didn't get far. She was caught, dragged back inside, and beaten so severely she blacked out. When she woke up, she was in a small locked room. Her wrists were tied, her face swollen. Days passed in fragments. Sometimes, a guard would bring food. Sometimes, she would be left in darkness for hours. Then came the man she would later call the one in charge. His name, she said, was Mim Aldry, a figure whose name had circulated in whispers in modeling circles. He told her bluntly, "You've seen too much. You talk, you die. Stay quiet, and maybe you live." Anya understood then that survival would depend on compliance. She pretended to submit, nodding, saying whatever they wanted to hear. But she never stopped looking for a chance to escape. After several days, she managed to get hold of a phone, maybe left behind by accident, maybe intentionally, and tried to send a message. Someone discovered her attempt. The punishment that followed was brutal. She spoke of being shocked with electric cables, beaten with a heavy object, left in a corner, barely conscious. At some point, the decision must have been made that she was too much of a risk to keep. She wasn't killed, perhaps because doing so would draw too much attention. Instead, she was sedated, placed on a plane, and transported back to her home country under guard. She was dumped near an abandoned terminal at dawn. Her body was broken, fractured ribs, shattered wrists, burns across her back and arms. She was found by a taxi driver, who said he thought she was a ghost at first, stumbling through the morning fog. When she was taken to the hospital, doctors were shocked. Police were curious. And Anya, for days, said nothing, lying in bed with a vacant stare, as though part of her soul had been left behind in that villa. When she finally began to speak, what she revealed stunned investigators. When Anya was finally found, the world around her had already moved on. It was a cold dawn morning when a taxi driver spotted her on the roadside near an abandoned terminal. At first, he thought she was drunk, a lost traveler trying to find her way home. But as he slowed down, he saw the state she was in. Her clothes were torn, her skin covered in bruises and cuts. She was barefoot, limping, her hair matted with blood. When he rolled down the window, she didn't speak. She just stared at him with vacant eyes. He rushed her to the nearest hospital, where doctors worked for hours to stabilize her. The injuries were extensive: multiple fractures, broken wrists, cracked ribs, severe dehydration, and what appeared to be electrical burns across her back. She was placed in intensive care, her body hooked up to four drips and monitors. For the first 2 days, she didn't speak at all. Nurses described her as frozen, staring at the ceiling, barely blinking. Some thought she might never speak again. Her family arrived soon after. The sight of Anya in that hospital bed brought them to tears. This wasn't the confident, glamorous young woman they knew. This was someone who had been through a nightmare and barely survived. Slowly, fragments of her memory began to surface. She would whisper single words at first: villa, guards, blood, then longer phrases, piecing together the story of what happened. Investigators were called in. They sat by her bedside, taking careful notes as she spoke. Her testimony was halting, broken by tears, but the details she provided were chillingly precise. The location of the villa, the layout of the rooms, the names and faces of some of the men she saw. Even in her fragile state, she was adamant about one thing: this wasn't an accident. I didn't fall. They did this to me. Back home, news of her discovery spread quickly. Social media lit up with speculation. Was she the victim of a trafficking ring? A secret party gone wrong? Her friends were both relieved and horrified. Many said they had feared the worst, that she'd never come back at all. One of them recalled, "We used to joke about these trips, say she was living the dream. But when she came back like this, it stopped being a joke. We realized how dangerous it really was." Doctors warned that her recovery would be slow and painful. She had already undergone multiple surgeries to repair the damage to her spine and wrists. Rehabilitation would take months. But Anya wasn't just physically broken, she was haunted. Nurses reported that she would wake up screaming in the night, shaking uncontrollably, as if reliving the horrors of the villa. And still, she kept talking. Not to the press, not to strangers, but to the investigators and her closest confidants. Piece by piece, the story emerged, and with it came the terrifying realization that Anya might not be the only victim. As Anya's strength slowly returned, investigators began piecing together her testimony. They traced her final days in Dubai, hotel check-in records, airport surveillance footage, and phone data, confirming that she had been picked up by a private car hours before she vanished. But the villa she described was harder to track down. Dubai is full of private estates hidden behind high walls, guarded by security. Even with her detailed account of its layout, investigators struggled to find it. Then came the breakthrough. Encrypted messages recovered from Anya's phone. Invitations to a so-called private yacht party had been sent to her by a contact in the modeling world, a man who arranged jobs for multiple girls. Investigators discovered that two other models, Diana and Sonia, had received the same invitation. Diana's phone had gone dark the same night as Anya's. The last thing she ever sent was a voice note to Anya. "Mashe, I can't hear you. Please help. It's hell." They're doing horrible things. I saw someone dragged into the basement. After that message, Diana was never heard from again. Sonia's case was even more chilling. Weeks later, her body was pulled from a river. Officially, the cause of death was listed as drowning, but her family didn't believe it. The bruises on her body, the fear in her last few texts, told a different story. Journalists began digging deeper. They uncovered reports of other young women, models, influencers, promotional workers, who had also disappeared after flying out for private events in the Gulf. Some were never found. Others turned up dead under mysterious circumstances. Everything pointed to an underground network, a secretive operation using modeling agencies and freelance scouts to recruit women, luring them with promises of luxury and easy money. What Anya had experienced wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger, darker pattern. Her testimony named names. Among them was a man she called the one in charge, Mimoldri, a shadowy figure rumored to organize these gatherings. She also mentioned seeing a well-known Gulf businessman, a man with enormous wealth and influence, who went by the name Sheikh Abu Khalid. Investigators knew these names, but prosecuting them was another matter entirely. The case crossed borders, involved powerful people with deep connections, and relied heavily on Anya's fragile memory. Much of what she said was credible, but without hard evidence, building a case would be nearly impossible. Lawyers working with her family admitted the challenge. We're not just fighting for justice. We're fighting against a system that protects the very people we're accusing. Despite this, journalists continued to push the story. Independent media outlets published exposes connecting Anya's case to similar disappearances in Europe and Russia. They revealed leaked guest lists from previous private events, some of which included the names of politicians, businessmen, and members of royal families. The story began to gain traction online. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice for Anya, for Diana, for Sonia. But even as the pressure grew, official action stalled. Diplomatic channels remained quiet. No arrests were made. And, disturbingly, new reports of similar parties continued to surface. For Anya, this was the most terrifying part, knowing that while she was slowly rebuilding her life, the machine that had nearly destroyed her was still running. Anya survived, but survival came with a price. Her recovery was slow and agonizing. She underwent 4 major surgeries to repair her spine, wrists, and ribs. Weeks of rehabilitation followed, every step a reminder of the night she thought she wouldn't make it out alive. Her body slowly healed, but her mind remained trapped in that villa. She woke up from nightmares screaming. Loud noises made her flinch. She kept her curtains closed, convinced that someone was watching her. Doctors said the trauma might stay with her for life. And yet, she chose to speak. Anya gave her testimony, naming the men she remembered, describing in harrowing detail the rituals, the masked guests, the security guards with guns. But every time her story reached a new layer of power, it hit a wall. The agency that arranged her trip claimed ignorance. Officials in the Gulf refused to comment. The men she named were never summoned for questioning. And then came the threats. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night. Encrypted messages warning her to stay quiet. A car parked outside her family's home for hours, engine running. Her lawyers believed these were intimidation tactics, a way to remind her that the people behind these events were still watching. Still, she didn't stop speaking. Her story went viral online, sparking outrage and fear in equal measure. Independent blogs called it proof of a hidden network of elite parties. Social media campaigns demanded justice, but mainstream outlets stayed cautious, unwilling to name names without concrete evidence. And as the headlines faded, so did hope for justice. Just a week after Anya was found, whispers began about another gathering, a different country, a different villa, new girls flown in. For the men who orchestrated these events, Anya was just one mistake, one loose thread. And once she was out of sight, the machine kept running. Today, Anya is alive, but she lives quietly, away from the spotlight she once craved. She rarely gives interviews, and when she does, she speaks softly, her eyes distant. Friends say she still carries fear with her. She still looks over her shoulder. And somewhere, behind closed doors, another girl is boarding a plane, thinking she's headed for a glamorous weekend. Maybe she come back. Maybe she won't. The truth about these parties, and the powerful men who host them, remains hidden, buried under money, silence, and fear. And until someone forces it into the light, the world may never know just how deep the darkness goes. Thanks for watching.